And I'm very excited to have my colleagues here with me today to talk about something that's on, I think, a lot of people's minds in terms of our aging infrastructure, our infrastructure, roads and bridges, and other things that we see in our home states that need help. And this is something that Congress has done for many, many years together on a bipartisan basis. Our focus today is to say what our concepts are as Republicans, as what infrastructure means, what our principles are in terms of pay-fors, and then say to President Biden and his team and our Democrat colleagues, we're ready to sit down and get to work on this. I think that's probably the biggest message we want to put forward today, is that this is important to us. So let's define infrastructure. You can see here our definition of infrastructure, and we've talked a lot about this. Core infrastructure, physical infrastructure. What do people think of in our states when they think about infrastructure? And so I'll go through them briefly. Roads and bridges, public transit systems, rail, which could be cargo, passenger rail, water and wastewater. I'm going to stop there for a minute to say that the first part of this infrastructure package could be come up in front of the entire Senate next week, and hopefully will, with the EPW bill on clean drinking water and wastewater that we passed out unanimously. Every Republican, every Democrat voted for this. Ports and inland waterways. Airports. Broadband is the infrastructure that, if you'd asked us this question 10 years ago, we probably wouldn't have thought to do it, or if we had, we would have been very futuristic and been able to see what the great needs would be. But broadband is an essential and core infrastructure package. And lastly, water storage and safety. I think it's important for you all to realize that this is the largest infrastructure investment that Republicans have come forward with. This is a robust package when we look at where we're focusing our infrastructure needs. The funding levels and the principles are meant to guide us. And then we would say, and I would say, now's the time for the committees to get to work. And that's why I think it's really important to note that the folks that are here with me today, Senator Capito can't join, are the ranking members of the relevant committees that would be moving forward a robust infrastructure package. I've done a lot of outreach to my fellow Republicans. I've talked to Democrats. I've talked to my committee chair, Senator Carper, more than a few times. And I've talked with the White House, which many of us have. Some of us have been down to the White House to talk directly with the president. But we've certainly been talking about how important this is for a 21st century that has forward-looking, innovative infrastructure. So we agree that these bills are necessary, and that the committees of jurisdiction should be the ones that force the compromise and forge the great policies that we need to make sure that we're meeting this challenge. So for that to happen, I think also, as I've lined out what infrastructure is, you can see the amount of dedicated funds to a total of about $568 billion as where we would see a great way for us to express what we think the need over 5 years would be in these categories. And we also have concepts of principles of how to pay for this. And some of my colleagues will talk about this, but I think it's important that you know that some of the ideas that we have for pay-fors, and this would be fully paid for, and that's critical, I think. That's critical. We need to cover the cost of the infrastructure bills to avoid increasing the debt. We all believe that. We need to shore up any infrastructure-related trust funds that's facing revenue shortfall. That does not mean raising the gas tax. That means looking at user fees and other users of our infrastructure that to this point have not or pay very little in terms of the wear and tear that they particularly move forward on our roads and highways. I'm talking about electric vehicles, hydrogen, hybrids, and those kinds of things. We've also heard a lot of talk about other things like a VMT. We've talked about that in committee. No commitments there at all. We're basically just lining out our principles. Another principle that we think is really important is to repurpose dollars that have already been appropriated. There's two specific ways, and I think Senator Toomey will talk about this, as well, and knows very much, and it really actually gave me the idea of this, and that is to repurpose some of the unspent dollars from COVID that are no longer considered in an emergency that can help us devote to infrastructure. You may recall I had an amendment to that effect when we did the COVID bill to say let's repurpose a lot of these dollars to infrastructure where it's mostly needed, knowing we were going to have a shortfall in the Highway Trust Fund. The other way would be to say to cities, counties, and states to open it up to, the availability of COVID dollars for them to be able to make matches or pay for infrastructure. And so the other thing is to preserve the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. And that would mean retaining the SALT deduction and other, I think, great economy building aspects of that which we all voted for. So that's the parameters of where we are. The other thing I would like to add is one of the legs to this stool is permitting. Our permits take too long, they're too costly, they're too complicated, and they end up not just costing time and money, but a lot of people walk away from the projects. And if we're going to really modernize and make sure that we're moving in a direction that we, I think, as Republicans and Democrats want to move, we've got to look at serious permitting reform. And so on that, I'm going to ask Senator Wicker if he would come up. And
well.